Welcome back to Parents Perspective. I'm Amy Bishop, and with me co hosting is Mike Thomas. We're here to continue our conversation on communication, the how, the when, the where. So, in the previous couple of sessions, we have gone from various topics on creating a safe place, a good environment for conversations to take place. We've talked about body language, tone, what platforms we can use for various conversations. And then we talked a little bit about motivational interviewing, a specific technique used mostly by clinicians, but can be adopted by parents, especially when working with teens. Teens want to be independent, they want to be independent thinkers, their own decision makers. And so motivational interviewing actually helps them do that. And it gives parents guidance to actually help the teen make better decisions. So without having a big tug of war and without having to say, do this because I said so. Teens generally do not, don't, don't take well to being told what to do anymore because they know better and they're all grown up. So motivational interviewing, we talked a little bit about expressing empathy was the first step, just in short review. And that just means that we identify with what our teens are feeling by restating how they feel. In other words, so if I'm hearing this right, you feel this way and insert the feeling. And then they have a chance to elaborate on that or tell you, no, you're misunderstanding me. And the second step that we reviewed last time was developing discrepancies. So that's where you take and find out what your goal for your teen is. So if they have a long-term path of college, for instance, it wouldn't really align with their goal for them to be getting poor grades, missing class, or getting into trouble after school. That just doesn't align. That path is where they're on is not going to take them to their endpoint of attaining their self-stated goals of going to college. So those were the two steps. And then Mike, do you want to add anything to that before I dive into the rest of our motivational interviewing?
Just that it's important that if you get a chance, if you want to Google those topics, if you're looking for some tidbits that are out there, there's a lot of stuff online that can give you some guided questions or some steps that you can take. We found a lot. We have some professional resources we use through improvingmipractices.org. But if you guys want to look up on Google, there's a lot of little questions that you can answer. I think it's important that you practice this stuff as much as you know about it, because the more you do it, the easier it'll become.
Absolutely, Mike, that is such an important point. This skill, this motivational interviewing skill is something that many clinicians have taken classes on, and you can, so what we're sharing today is just bridging the surface or just kind of skimming the surface of everything you can learn about motivational interviewing. And it definitely is, even if you take just a couple of tactics or skills from this, it's something that you need to practice because teens are really good at catching us if we are not sincere or if we're trying to, pull one over on them. They're very good at detecting that. So it's something that you want to practice maybe on an adult first before you try this with your teen at home. So if I can just dive right back into those couple of other steps I wanted to cover. So after we express empathy, we develop those discrepancies, then we want to know what to do when we get resistance, right? So this is a really tough one. This is to overcome that barrier of our teens just being argumentative, and you end up in this whole tug of war back and forth, and you're not getting anywhere. In fact, you're probably having your teen dig their heels in even deeper when you're pulling back and forth like that. Mike, you know anything about resistance?
Oh boy. I work primarily inside of the St. Clair County Intervention Center at the Huron House, working with individuals that have been arrested for substance related issues as well as domestic violence. And so if ever there's a group of people that you meet with resistance, it's individuals that have been charged with a crime that in many cases may not see what they're doing as necessarily an issue and are really struggling. And I like that we're doing these talks because too often people feel like they're not being heard and they feel like they're just everything's crammed on them. The whole world's caving in sometimes. And what these great big issues are really aren't that bad when you just frame things in a certain way and give them the chance to be the resource themselves by giving them little questions and that guiding them in the process instead of cramming things down their throat, or the people that are just looking for the checklist so they can move on instead of really understanding. I find sometimes it's better that they're part of that conversation. They do more talking. So these, but can you elaborate more on the resistance piece? Because that is an area that I was a little bit, I could work on.
Well, definitely, I can absolutely work on rolling with resistance because I still haven't mastered it. I don't think it's one of those steps we can absolutely master because we're dealing with young adults, right? They have a mind of their own, so sometimes they throw things at us that we're really not prepared to deal with. So again, it takes practice. So rolling with resistance is important because we want to avoid confrontation. That's a real important theme in motivational interviewing because it just gets into I'm right, you're wrong, and just because you're the parent you think you're right and I'm really right, and it just gets into a tug of war. No one ever makes any progress, and for sure your child is more apt to rebel even more and go the other route. So in rolling with resistance, the idea is to not have a standoff, if you will, because what that does when we put an absolute down is it really stops the conversation right there, or it becomes this big blow up fight. And then it becomes more detrimental than therapeutic or guided or positive at all. And that's the whole goal of having conversations with our teens, is to keep them positive, help them make good decisions, because they are going to be independent one day fully and they'll have to make their own decisions. So teaching problem solving skills and really teaching them the thinking process is part of this motivational interviewing. To get them to arrive at a conclusion or a decision or solution on their own is key. If we can get them to say it, if it's tough, just keep that in mind. We've got to get our kids to say what their goal is, what isn't aligning, what they may think the solution is, or how maybe they could make a change and do things differently. We're trying to get them to say it and create their own goal instead of being didactic and telling them what to do. So when I say roll with resistance, what I mean is don't oppose them directly. Maybe add another question that then they have to answer and elaborate on their thinking or logic behind the resistance. And in this, you can kind of take mental notes of things that they're saying, because then you're creating a whole list of other things that you can talk about in the future. So don't get in a standoff. Don't let that stop you. Just listen. Say, oh, well, why do you think that? Or what makes you say that? So you can pull in maybe where your child is coming from more and gather more information to have further conversations. So after rolling with resistance, and that's the tough one, is support self-efficacy. And what that means is basically you're supporting them in carrying out or having confidence to make a positive decision. So being optimistic and encouraging them when they start thinking, well, maybe I could do this. So maybe is a real key word because they're actually considering doing something different. And when you hear that type of talk, you want to definitely encourage it and boost their confidence, if you will, saying, you know what, I think you could do it. But they might say, well, I maybe could, but it would be really hard. I don't know how to go about it. So that's where you come in and you support it, and maybe even come up with another instance where they were successful. You want to have a success in your back pocket. Well, remember the time that you did this and you did it and it was tough, but you did it. And so boosting that confidence on previous success is definitely going to help them think that maybe they can really carry this out, no matter how tough that change is. Mike, you got anything to add there?
I think this is a good one when you're dealing with like what you're just talking about, not just the bad grades, like you mentioned in one of the previous segments, but with specific substances as well too. One of the big ones out there right now is just how benign people think marijuana is, for example. And the reality of it is whether you like it or not, whether our city officials have decided that dispensaries can come in here or not, it's still federally illegal. And there's still some issues surrounding it in certain ways of administering it. And so you're going to get a lot of resistance for certain topics like that. Yeah, but you know what? Marijuana is really not that bad. It's not like it's cigarettes, mom. And just all this other stuff around it, but it's just not true. And I read on somewhere where it says wah, 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 wah about marijuana being the best thing ever. And so we're not going to sit there and say, no, that's just stupid. And here's why. So you don't see marijuana as being a real, no, we're guiding them through the process and then getting them to basically come up with another way of looking at things. So they realize that, maybe this isn't the best solution. Maybe if I'm really wanting to deal with pain relief for other things, there might be other things I can do instead, because right now there's just certain drugs that are completely everybody's favorites. And the reality of it is there's really not a drug out there that's really that great for you. There's a lot of other things that you could be doing instead of marijuana, but going in and just fighting them on, no, it's wrong, it's stupid, it's against the law. All that's going to do is cause resistance. I deal with that on a daily basis, working with the clients that I'm working with. And I work with a lot of them that do not see, and we're talking 40, 50, 60 years old, and they're addicted. And you can be addicted to marijuana, and they don't see it as a problem. And going at them with that's just dumb is not going to work. Okay. By using these steps with motivational interviewing, you can get a lot of, give them a chance to express where they're at, coach them, give them some tips, and help them realize on their own that maybe there's some other better solutions that aren't going to give them the trouble, that aren't going to cause them grief, that are going to keep them back on their track to setting their goals like they want to in the first place, versus doing these other things, which take them farther away. And so I think this is really effective, folks. And Amy, we're about out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to share with that? Because I love this topic.
Yeah, I real quick, I just wanted to add that I really like what you said about applying motivational interviewing to some very serious topics like substance use, or even really sex and that topic someday with our young adults. So I think it's so important that we learn some of this now and practice it with some more benign, just little daily things that happen, like a bad grade or being irresponsible, not taking care of pets, and maybe even applying some of the storyboards that I've talked about previously, where you tell a story. Well, what do you think would have happened if I wouldn't have seen that your dog was out of water? What if this happened? What would be the consequence? So getting our youth to think through problems and realize consequences is a huge part of growing up. And if we get good at these conversations where they're routine and just a part of our relationship with our teens on a regular basis, we'll be more equipped to have those conversations and apply motivational interviewing when it comes to a very serious, possibly harmful issue, like getting into trouble, serious trouble after school, detention, or getting in trouble with the law, or driving and drinking, or drinking alcohol before age 21, or marijuana, like you said. So I think applying those techniques now and learning those and practicing those can certainly benefit us all as parents, myself included.
And folks, if you're still struggling with some ways of handling this, if you're really not sure what exactly to do, you're going through some of the basics, you need a little bit of help. I want to point out too that Impact is a program in the area that offers a parenting program. We're also going to be starting out our new 24/7 dad program for men that are trying to be more active with their children, especially for men that are non-custodial, that are trying to re-enter into a relationship with their children and just be the best fathers possible. These resources are available in the community, and there's others as well too. You can also pursue counseling if need be for yourself to kind of go through these, but just know that you're not alone with this, and there are plenty of resources out there. Speaking of which, we would like to thank Region 10, who is a big part of the funding for this program, as well as other agencies like St. Clair County Health Department, the Harbor, Blue Water Recovery Outreach Center, McLaren, and others that have been a part of this coalition. We thank you so much for your support. And for all of you that are watching, please keep tuning in Wednesdays at 6 o'clock and keep following us on Instagram, like us on Facebook. And thank you very much. Have a great night.